Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. It's about music, art, and culture, and this is Billboard Breakdown. So let me divulge to you all a little secret. For the most part, I'm actually completely fine with how the charts are proceeding right about now. And that's kind of unnerving for a few reasons. I mean, first of all, is this possibly an indication that the mainstream public is actually taking steps in the right direction, a promising direction? I'm not complaining, but it is surprising. A little bit more worrisome is the question that without all the latent insanity that I usually cover, that for the chart slowdown for positive reasons means that you'll stop paying attention. But hey, it's not like the drama is the only thing keeping all you watching, right? Okay, so instead of discussing that disquieting detail, let's move on to our top 10, where there were actually some pretty major changes this week. The first being a new number 1 with Justin Bieber's Sorry taking the top spot. Now in a sense, this isn't all that surprising. He rules YouTube and streaming, but he does not have the top spot in sales, and yet his airplay stabilized in a way that Hello by Adele did not. So while she slipped, he gained and made up the distance to take that spot. Now Hello is still a powerhouse at number 2. Big sales, still topping airplay, and with major presence in streaming, but it's got some stiff competition coming up in the leader of sales right now, Love Yourself by Justin Bieber at number 3. Plus the considerable boost on airplay, huge streaming, and even advances on YouTube are signs it's got a lot of momentum to come. What doesn't have that momentum is Hotline Bling by Drake at number 4. And really, I'm marveling it's holding up as long as it has. Solid streaming on YouTube, sure, but airplay losses and weak sales indicate its time might be running out. And the biggest threat, to my absolute amazement, might be Stressed Out by 21 Pilots, with left up 5 on sales, airplay, and even picking up streaming. Again, I'm amazed it got traction at all, but I'm not exactly complaining. It's a damn good song. It's probably a little bit exasperating for Selena Gomez's Same Old Love, which did advance up to number 6 on an airplay recovery and a streaming boost, but those sales are not nearly good enough to get any higher. It did do better than Stitches by Shawn Mendes at number 7, but that song had airplay and streaming losses and only slightly better sales. It was already shaky there. Not quite as bad as What Do You Mean by Justin Bieber at number 8, which is basically being propped up by streaming and YouTube compensate for weak sales and falling airplay. Then there's Here by Alessia Cara sliding down to number 9, which is holding on thanks to airplay gains and a bit of streaming and pretty much nothing else because the sales were pitiful. And finally, holding the line at number 10 and going nowhere fast, Like I'm Gonna Lose You by Meghan Trainor featuring John Legend, which with solid sales and a bit of streaming might have some traction, but airplay seems to have peaked now. It'll be interesting to see if it holds up over the next couple of weeks. And on the topic of not holding up, we've got our losers and dropouts. The latter case being a bit of a mixed bag. Yeah, it kinda sucks that I lose Burning House by Cam, especially as I don't see any new songs from her charting as of yet, which is baffling to me. But if it takes out the rest of Bieber's non-singles and hit the Quan by I Love Memphis along the way, I'm not complaining here. And on that note, I don't think there's a single loss that I'm really all that concerned about either. Blase by Ty Dolla $ign, Future, and Ray Shermer falling to 99. Come Get Her by Ray Shermer dropping to 85. Right Hand by Drake losing all its sleeper momentum and skidding back down to 78. None of these are all that bad that they're going away. It does suck a little bit that RGF Island by Fetty Wap didn't pick up any more and fell to 94, but he had 4 solid hits off of 1 album. That's better than he should have ever expected. Finally, there's the complete flop of Focus by Ariana Grande, which was reportedly dropped from radio rotation thanks to abysmal results, which led to a fall down to number 50. Really not a good sign for Ariana's momentum going in, considering this is going to be her lead-off single for her next album. Again, not a good sign. And yet, in the meantime, when we get to our returning entries, we've got Taylor Swift releasing her 6th single from 1989 with Out of the Woods, which roared up to 46 based on the release of its video. And look, I like the song, but that video is hysterical. The sort of overdone CGI mess that shows her video director got way too carried away with the storyboarding. I mean, I saw it when I debuted on New Year's Eve, and really, when an entire house party can go Mystery Science Theater 3000 on your video without a single rewatch, not a good sign. Outside of that, Ginza by J Balvin returned to 96 and will probably be gone again next week. And most interestingly, Tennessee Whiskey by Chris Stapleton clawed its way up to number 100. We'll talk more about Stapleton in a bit, but it's interesting to see him picking up a little bit of traction on the radio. You wouldn't otherwise expect that. Granted, this is a busy week for country music regardless, as we saw gains from Backroad Song by Granger Smith rising up to 69, Break On Me by Keith Urban picking up after its debut to 74, and Beautiful Drug by the Zac Brown Band going up to 71, even though in that last case, it's barely even a country song. Beyond that, most of the rest of the gains, they're fine enough. Play No Games by Big Sean, Chris Brown, Ty Dolla $ign's trying to get momentum again at 89. Stand Stand By You by Rachel Platt and continuing its surge up to 38. And then there's Cake by the Ocean by DNC, completely ruining a good bass line with one of the worst choruses since Maroon 5 said This Summer Was Gonna Hurt. Look, they can't all be winners, I get that, and at least I can mostly enjoy the verses, even if they are a very pale facsimile of everything Uptown Funk does better, but really, the song is kinda lousy. So to switch on to something that's far better, let's take a look at our new arrivals, starting with number 97, Nobody to Blame by Chris Stapleton. You know, it's exasperating covering Chris Stapleton as a critic who liked but didn't really love his debut album, because the expectation becomes, hey, this is your sort of country that should be right up your alley. Why aren't you praising it all to the high heavens? Well, in this case, it's more me wishing that Chris Stapleton released better singles than this, because while Nobody to Blame is good, he's made better off of that album Traveler. Yeah, Dave Cobb's smoky production sounds great, especially with that great thicker bass line, the ragged fiddle and steel guitar, and a really solid echoing, rattling tone for the solo on the bridge. And of course, Chris Stapleton, he sounds fantastic as always. It's just that the song itself is a pretty bare-bones story about him doing something to wrong his girl and how she destroys his stuff in vivid detail. And there's two factors to why the song doesn't really click for me. Firstly, it can feel a little bit over the top, especially when we never actually get the details of what he did in the first place. And more importantly, it can feel a little bit odd when the backing vocals in the song are coming from his wife. Kinda hurts the suspension of disbelief there in the verisimilitude. At the end of the day though, this is a solid track and it's easily better than the majority of modern country radio. I'll definitely stand by that. But it's analogous to getting irked that Stressed Out became a hit by 21 Pilots. Sure, it's a good song, but you'd have liked to see it for songs that are so much better. Just saying. Number 93, Two Phones by Kevin Yates.
One for the plug and one for the load. I got two phones, one for the bitches and one for the dough. Think I need two more. Line popping, I'm ring, ring, ringing. Count money while it ring, ring, ringing. Trap jumping, I'm ring, ring, ringing.
So with these singles actually landing some chart presence, does this mean that I actually have to care about Kevin Gates' upcoming debut album? I mean, I liked I Don't Get Tired more than I probably should have, but really was a real momentum killer. I will say that Two Phones is better, but not by much, mostly because it pushes into the hard grind and ruthless work ethic that makes Kevin Gates' material click, where most coke rap can get kind of exasperating, especially in its very muted melody and sparse percussion to pretty decent atmosphere. And for the first two verses, he brings that intensity to his flows and backs up a solid hook, and then the third verse blows it all to shows him taking your girl, who he describes as a Barbie doll, so might as well go full tilt into the objectification here, and if she smells fishy, he has her drowned. A little hard to overlook that part, even as he starts to see more of this girl starts catching feelings, and then promptly disregards her because one of his two phones goes off. And you know, I can see how this track might have worked. Frame it as working from an existing relationship and the struggle to keep balance between work and his girl, like what Freddie Gibbs does. Well, instead, in this lane where we got Pusha T, Gibbs, and maybe Jeezy where they have prevalence, Kevin Gates is lagging behind pretty hard because this is pretty mediocre. Number 87, Sugar by Robin Schulz featuring Francesco Yates. Well, it's about time this got here. We've had this song in Canada for months now, mostly because Francesco Yates is Canadian, but also because this song is pretty damn sweet, and yet the elements that make it work are kind of weird. For one, the song samples a mostly forgotten Baby Bash song from 2003 called Suga Suga that featured a far better guitar line and hook courtesy of Frankie J than Baby Bash knew what to do with. So Robin Schulz does the best thing possible with it, strips the track down to that guitar line, brings in some sandy percussion with real tightness, and lets Francesco Yates bring some real tightness to the vocal line. Which is a razor-tight song celebrating a girl who is hot as all hell and probably pretty dangerous. Not gonna lie, I dig the hell out of this song, even despite that odd Sean Penn reference in the second verse. That's not exactly a flattering comparison to anyone these days, especially for a girl. So yeah, again, outside of that, this is a great dance track. Definitely recommended, check this out. Number 81, We by Jeremih. Hey, there's no we without you. So at the end of the year, year, Jeremih finally released his long-delayed third album, Late Nights. And I'll be blunt and say that I really did not care to cover it one way or the other. I've always considered Jeremih a B-list R&B act at best who, like Flo Rida, has little to no personality and is only tolerable when he finds a hook to sample or outright steal, or when his guest star completely overshadows him. And knowing the critics who were giving that album critical acclaim was enough for me to just resign to only cover him when he shows up on Billboard Breakdown, with this being his third single from an album that frankly has sold miserably. And honestly, this isn't bad. Certainly better than I expected, in that it's a pretty straightforward love song where Jeremih is longing to take off with his girl and go have fun together, because there's no we without you and I. Kinda clever when you squint at it if you think about it. Honestly, where this track kinda stumbles for me is in the production, with that rubbery bend of fuzz slathered all over a grainy rattle of a trap beat and burbling keys. Say nothing of the pitch correction drenching Jeremih's vocals, which frequently shift between incoherent yelping and the actual bars. I honestly wish the performer was a lot more interesting in order to match the writing, because as it is, this feels more anonymous than it should. Not bad, but in different hands, it'd be a lot better. And finally, number 76, Heartbeat by Carrie Underwood.
Cricket choir in the background, underneath the harvest moon, standing on your shoes and my bare feet, dancing to the rhythm of your heartbeat.
I can't be the only one who thinks that Carrie Underwood's Smoke Break underperformed a little bit, especially for a lead-off single and a pretty damn good song to boot. I'm a little bit surprised it didn't do better on the charts, not going to number 1 of the country charts and not selling as well as other lead singles have in the past. Well, this was not the way to follow it, because just like Chris Stapleton did, she picked a second single that wasn't even close to the best songs on her album Storyteller. And like with Jeremih, it's not so much the content of the track that bothers me so much as the instrumentation and the production. Look, even though the sandier beat has more punch, you're not gonna tell me this is not a painfully thin drum machine on the verses, or that the guitars aren't washed out and too liquid to balance out well with Carrie's vocals. The larger issue is a matter of groove. For as much as this mid-tempo song wants to go down easy and be kind of a slick R&B style country song, it doesn't have that thicker bass line for more foundation, and no, Sam Hunt's backing vocals aren't enough here. Look, this is not a bad song, but I'm baffled why Carrie chose this as her second single, especially when country right now is starting to tip away from being so slick and polished, and she has more interesting tracks in that vein on that album. In other words, I don't see this even being as big as Smoke Break was, and that's kind of an issue. So that was this week, and honestly it might be one of the few weeks where I have a hard time giving a worst of the week, because there wasn't really any outright terrible songs. I mean, I'm gonna give it to Two Phones by Kevin Gates, but even that was more mediocre than bad. And if the third verse wasn't there, it'd actually be pretty passable. I wouldn't mind it. As for the best, you know, I'm giving it to Robin Schulz and Francesco Yates for Sugar, for just being a slick, kick-ass little song that I really enjoyed. Overall, we're running a couple good weeks in a row here, so let's keep up with that momentum. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown on Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.